Good evening and welcome to the Audit and Governance Standards Committee. Before we start the meeting, I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. Members of the public are welcome to film, audio record, photograph or tweet the public proceedings of the meetings. I'd ask anyone in the room to please be considerate towards other people and take care not to disturb proceedings. Have we received any apologies for the meeting?
We've received apologies from Councillor Adam Hood.
Can all members present confirm they are voting members of the committee? Thank you. I've agreed to a change in the order of the agenda, and I will be inviting, I will be bringing forward to the start of the agenda items 8 and item 16. So that's item retrospective contract related decision on communal light electrical testing contracts and housing asset management, and then we will continue with the rest of the agenda as planned. I'll take that as a no. Minutes. Can members please approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November 2026? Thank you. So we now move to item 8, and I'd like to invite Hakeem and Ryan and no, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Could you please introduce yourselves?
Again, hi, I'm Kerry Theobald. I'm the Assistant Director of Building Safety and Compliance.
Ryan Collymore, the Director of Repairs and Maintenance.
Hakeem Oshinake, Strategic Director of Housing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you like to present the report?
Yeah, so I'll take the report as read, but I just want to say that the health and safety of our residents is the most important thing to us. And when the Strategic Director of Housing started about 18 months ago, he realised that we hadn't done our electrical testing, and we had about 30,000 properties outstanding. We then had to self-refer to the regulator, and the Strategic Housing Director set us a target of reaching 100% by March 2026. And in order to do that, we knew that we wouldn't be able to do a whole new procurement exercise, but we had 2 contractors that were working for us and were doing a good job. So we asked them to take on the electrical testing as part of their contract, and we extended the contract for that reason. And the reason we did procure was more about timelines and not being able to meet the target, but as a result of getting those contractors on board and having the work going to the existing contractors, it allowed us to procure 2 new contractors in that time period as well, who started doing the ICRs for us later on, late last year.
Do members have any questions? Okay. Can you talk a bit about any safeguards to prevent this having to happen again? Because it's not an ideal situation, understandable under the circumstances, of course. But is there any work being done to ensure that this, at all costs, can be prevented in future?
So I think what we plan to do, and as I've said, we have procured 2 new contractors. I think what we plan to do is have separate contractors for electrical testing, which we didn't have before. So we're going for a longer procurement exercise now to bring in some contractors to do our ERCRs moving forward. So because we've split the contracts now, we'll have people doing communal lighting, contractors doing communal lighting, and others doing communal electrics, and others doing domestic electrics. So it gives us a better pool of contractors. If we needed to bring in more resource, we could do that through those contractors in a contract that's valid.
So really, it was a change in workflow that caused this, rather than the contract coming to the end and then trying to be rolled over. Is that correct?
If I may add to this, Chair. So the contract coming to an end coincided with a time when we needed to act very, very quickly, to protect the health and safety of our residents. But to answer your other question generally, we're a lot tighter on our procurement. There are historical issues around, delays in starting procurements and therefore having to extend contracts. I recognize that. But that's one of the things that we are addressing. There's been a backlog of those issues, but going forward, we shouldn't. I don't expect that I or my colleagues will be, back in front of you explaining another retrospective in this way.
Thank you. Andy.
Thanks very much for this. I've got a couple of different questions. The first is, why were 2 retrospective approvals needed? That sort of implies a decision was made, and then later on the decision then had to be extended for a second time. So I don't quite understand that to start with.
Ultimately, I think it was around the governance and the appropriate time to bring in the new contractors. So it was clear that with the target through till the end of March, we required that the full period through to the end of that target and then beyond to make sure that we manage services for customers. So again, I think in terms of the foresight, there's a lot that we can do better, and we are doing better now. But it was acted in the best interest of resident safety throughout the entire process.
Thanks very much. And so we're on the 3rd of February. These contracts extensions ended at the end of January. What's the situation today?
My understanding is that it takes us through to August of this year. At the moment, we are currently going through the procurement for new contractors.
Can you just take us through the dates then? If you look at our agenda, page 16, go towards the bottom, paragraph 7, paragraph 4 to paragraph 7.
Right, sorry, my apologies. 40. So yes, we've got an extension that takes us through to August, 2025, and then from September till the end of January. We're currently in procurement of the new contracts. So we are likely to need a further extension of these through to that point when we have those contractors on board. So I think there'll be a further requirement coming through, both groups retrospect, because these are for the retrospective decisions. There's a separate piece going forward from January, as I understand it, so which wouldn't come to this committee.
It may sound confusing, I'm afraid.
It does.
So the paper before you is about decisions that were already made. Yeah. So there is another decision, that is not retrospective. So the contractors, we currently have 4 contractors in place carrying out electrical testing that are within procured contracts. But this specifically relates to decisions that were made previously on those contracts.
Okay, so are the 2 contractors who had the extensions till the 31st, have they had another extension through to August, or are we dealing with a different set of contractors?
They have had another extension through to August 2026.
And when will that decision take place? And won't that be another report coming to this committee later because you're making a third?
Because it was done before the expiry, it's not retrospective. I mean, we'll be happy to share the details with you.
Okay.
But the reason why this paper is here is because the decisions were taken, yes, ahead of, after the expiry of the contract.
Yep.
But if extensions are done as they should, before the expiry of the contract, then they do not need to be part of this process.
I understand that, but I was just asking, had the contracts been extended, and if so, what was the date on which the contracts were extended?
Well,
Have they not been-
we
they not
don't have
been
that
extended?
information to hand, but we can share it.
Okay. So if we could have that as a follow-up, that would
Yeah.
be good. Chair, I've got other questions, but happy to. I'm not trying to hog the floor if either of you had questions.
Yeah, please go ahead.
And I was just going to ask a question about asset mapping. So if you think of communal lighting on estates, for example, part of the overall assets, how are your assets mapped? I had a meeting with street lighting on Friday. I was just talking about the fact that they have mapped some of your lamp columns on estates, but not all of them. Yeah, what's the system where they're mapped? How do residents? Because there often seems to be confusion about how do you describe. It's a simple issue. A light is out. How do you describe where it is to make sure that the contractor knows where it is, to make sure the person in the call centre who ends up raising the job, how are those assets mapped?
So I don't know how they're mapped, but generally lampposts on estates will have numbers that can be referred to when they're being reported. But I'm not sure the whole mapping process for those. I'm not sure we've got one on our estates at the moment.
In addition to that, most of the queries we get are around estates, as you might expect. Having seen a number of them come through, generally speaking, when we have reports of lamps out, we ask our contractors to review the area to make sure that there are enough others so that when they go out. So as long as we can get some indication of roughly where the light that's out is, all of those around will also be checked at the same time.
That's great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think Virginia has some information relating to your previous question.
Just to confirm, the Gateway 3 variation approval for communal lighting and electrical testing works up to the 31st of August this year is available and was signed up, which I can pass on to you if that would be helpful.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe you could send us the link. Can we note the retrospective contract decisions,
Noted, Chair.
the actions taken to ensure the risk is minimised, and do we want to make any formal recommendations?
Chair, if Virginia's saying this has already been signed off, then that explains it.
Yeah.
I guess just having a short power in the report would have made it much easier for everyone to follow.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 16, which is the repairs and maintenance update.
Again, I'll take the report as read. This is just giving an update of our progress in repairs and maintenance since we've and how we've responded to the regulator for social housing in response repairs, damp and mould, with our fire risk assessments, our compliance more generally, progress on our capital programme, and also our stock condition survey. And this just provides an update on how we've progressed since the last time we were here.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the officers? Andy?
I've got a couple. So, para 13 talks about progress on electrical certificates, moving in the right direction. That's good. It says progress excluding those properties where access was not gained. I just wondered roughly what type of proportion are you not getting into?
The number is moving because the two new contractors are working diligently following up after the first two to reduce that number. So whilst we get the no access, we're not sitting on our laurels to leave them. We're currently forecasting by the end of the year that we'll be at around between 15 and 20% no access on the first wave at the end of March, which, considering the number of properties and the task involved, I think has been is a significant is a good performance for those contractors, but those will then be followed up further beyond March. Obviously, the law change is in March and does provide certain additional powers to provide legal access to those homes in addition to those that we have through the tenancy. So, given that resident safety remains our biggest challenge and we will continue with that.
And is there any feel for reasons for no access? Is it inconvenient time of the day, or maybe the odd bit of fraud behind there? People.
We're looking at the data now to bring in data from public health, social services, all of those kind of things to understand the nature of those residents that haven't allowed us in. I think there'll be some themes. There'll be, I think research would suggest that there are a number of residents that are inaccessible through conventional means. We need to find more innovative ways to reach them. I think you're right, there are probably some homes which don't want us in for other reasons, which we need to get to the bottom of. But what we're going to do is a data-led project on that so that we target individual themes of individuals or families that won't allow us in. Not least the fact more flexible times for access.
Yeah, and then I had two other points. Less colleagues got things. 35 procurement. An interesting little para here that says typically governance timeframes are lengthy at Southwark. It'd be helpful if you could just elaborate on that. Is that compared to Haringey, any other council? Is it all our gateways that are lengthy? Is it the fact you have to come back here for retrospectives?
I think Clive may want to come.
Yeah, so I guess I have responsibility for procurement. That's probably one for me, Councillor. So yeah, we do have some quite cumbersome governance. Some of it for entirely good reasons. Some of it I think is disproportionate to the risk and does slow things down. As part of the Council's transformation programme, we're looking at the way in which we engage our suppliers and how we contract with them and how we procure them. And over the course of 2026, as we move into 27, we'll be looking at a refresh of our procurement governance arrangements that will be proportional to the risk we are trying to manage, both in terms of transparency, value for money, but also ensuring that the timeliness fits at sometimes what is quite urgent procurement.
Thanks. And then one last one, which I think is probably for Hakeem, but any of you can take it. On another report on the agenda, it says that 55% of leasehold properties are rented out to private tenants. That doesn't seem right to me. I just wanted to check what you thought it would be.
Councillor Simmons, I hadn't seen that stats previously. It's worth checking, but it wouldn't surprise me because, as we know, it's a significant proportion of people who bought their properties on their right to buy have relet them and moved elsewhere. But I cannot confirm that number is 55%, as I see it here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Would any member of the committee like to speak further on this matter? Okay. Can we note the positive trends against the improvement plan, the ongoing delivery of the programme, and the timeline for a new 5-year investment plan? And can I add to request that we get written to confirm or otherwise that 55% of leasehold properties are now privately rented? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, sure. Does that mean we're in quorum?
Nope. Your quorum is 2.
Oh.
Or 25% of the committee, whichever is the
Right. Well,
the committee of 7. So
okay.
to my great.
Yes. Don't go anywhere, Andy, will you? Yeah. Okay. So we now move on to item 6, governance conversation, Strategic Director of Children and Adult Services. Welcome. Hi there.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for inviting me this evening. I hope I haven't scared off the rest of the committee at the prospect of me talking for hours on a rainy night. But thank you for inviting me. So, just by way of kind of setting the scene, it's my 12th year at Southwark. I think it's my 10th time appearing before this committee. And I'm pleased to say that the governance arrangements within children's and adults remain the same. The department has a board called the Children's and Adults Board, which I chair, and the Director of Public Health, the Director of Children's Services, and the Director of Adult Social Care are members of that board. And we also have Finance and HR as full members of that board. And what that means is that for every paper, every decision that we take, it's the directors and myself as strategic director, but it's also finance and HR in the room. And you might be surprised to hear that HR and finance colleagues make really great contributions to a whole range of issues, because of course they're approaching these issues with a different professional perspective, but that people aspect is very important and the money aspect is very important. So Children's Adults Board, called CAB, meets every fortnight for an afternoon, and all of the papers, all of the issues that the department deals with go through that board, and then they make their way to lead member briefings, to corporate management team, to cabinet, to individual decision maker. So everything goes through that board. We were pleased to welcome the leader to a CAB meeting a few months ago, so she could see how the board was operating and the issues that were on the agenda. I make no apologies for running a very tight ship in terms of governance, because the risks that we deal with in children's and adults are very significant. So we are very formal. Everything presented in papers with concurrence from directors, concurrence from legal, and then it makes it much easier when we go and brief the lead members that they see the same information that we see. So I'll give you an example that this week we've had lead member briefings with Councillor Ali and Councillor Koto. We've run through updates on significant issues like schools, so you'll be aware that some schools closed, so we brought an update to Councillor Ali on the status of those schools, exactly what's happening with them, so then she can brief other councillors and make sure ward councillors are informed about any traction happening in that space. Q3 performance reports were shared, so both cabinet members see exactly the same information that we see. This is quite important because the council's delivery plan touches on, manifesto becomes delivery plan, but we have a whole other suite of things that we need to monitor to keep fully abreast of developments in children's, adults and public health. So both cabinet members get exactly the same reports that we get at CAB, which cover a range of issues. Some are statutory and some are just contemporary across the sector. So a week after we see those reports at CAB, both cabinet members see the full suite of reports as well. And then on developments with working with the NHS, so both members can see what's happening in that partnership working. But very importantly, on both those LMBs, we also look at the forward plan. So everything that's listed to come forward for decisions by me or by the cabinet member as an IDM or in the pipeline for cabinet, it means the cabinet members have an opportunity to say, so tell me a bit more about that. What will it cover? What won't it cover? So it's kind of more co-producing what comes through in that pipeline and hopefully, you know, it briefs them very well on that. So our lead member briefings are also documented. There's no verbal updates. Everything is presented in written format, so then the cabinet members have a written record. So again, quite formal, but we think that's important for our area. In terms of the kind of situation for children's, adults and public health, we're waiting on some significant changes to legislation around SEND, for example, and around neighbourhood health and care. So whilst we await them, we carry on with our council plan and our performance targets. Just as a little headline from each of those areas, in children's services, I'm very pleased to say that the number of children in care is significantly down. It's the lowest in the history of the borough. And that is not because we're taking risks and not protecting children. It's because of the significant investment by this administration in family help and early help. So we've been able to support a lot more families to work through the difficult challenges that they face. So numbers are down overall, and the biggest growth has been in care leavers and unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, who we're very proud to be supporting well. We opened a children's home last year because, as you know, the children's care sector has grown like topsy and become a big market. So we opened our own children's home, which is staffed by Southwark Council staff. I'm delighted to say that was recently rated as outstanding by Ofsted. And we have a second children's home that we're opening as an in-house service as well very soon. It's very rare that a children's home gets outstanding for its first inspection. If you're good, they normally give you good and come back for a second.
Yeah.
But that report is absolutely fantastic because the voice of those children comes through. And repeatedly they say in that report that they're not just well cared for, they feel loved. So we're very proud that a Southwark Council children's home is caring for those children so well, and Ofsted have rated it outstanding. We're ready for another inspection. We would expect Ofsted to be in within the next couple of weeks for a full inspection of children's services. We're last on the list to be inspected, and their inspection programme must be complete by the end of March. So we're ready for that inspection. We look forward to that inspection. And then at the end of that inspection, we get an indicative grade, and very soon after, we get the final official grade. So members of this committee and others will know what the Ofsted rating is within the next couple of months. That's a full inspection of children's services. In terms of adult social care, lots of pressures and demands in that space. We're waiting for Dame Casey's review to report back to government. It's a long time coming for adult social care to be looked at, so we're delighted that review is underway. We're hopeful with that review, but the pressures are significant. So what we're seeing in Southwark is a growth in our older population. This borough has always been a very young borough, so relatively speaking, compared to other local authorities, we've had a small population of people using adult social care. But last year we had 4,055 people open to adult social care, which is almost double the number when I came here 12 years ago. So we're seeing a significant increase in people using adult social care and needing that care and support. We're seeing people with higher levels of need. So the NHS waiting list has an impact on people in terms of social care. And we're seeing an increase in costs of providing care. We are very proud that this council has an ethical care charter for home care and a residential ethical care charter too. That really helps us with workforce, recruitment and retention, and permeates through to quality of care. So there are pressures in that area, and we will continue to step up and meet those challenges. We had a CQC inspection of adult social care last year. We're hoping the report will be published end of this month. It's a long time coming, so we have to wait for them to publish their report at the end of the month, but that is expected this month, so I hope members will be able to see that report. Then, in terms of public health, the team really stepped up, as you know, during the pandemic, and my reflection is they never really stepped down. They've continued to work at pace. The Maternity Commission, which highlighted the experience of Black, Asian and global majority women in maternity service, I think is one of the most important pieces of work in the maternity space. You'll be aware there's been a number of reviews in different parts of the country, but I don't think any of those reviews got under the skin of some of the issues, the experiences of pregnant women and the experiences of staff working in maternity services. And I think the panel that we had here who led that commission under Councillor Cotto did a really, really outstanding piece of work to have proper insight and come up with recommendations. So the Health and Wellbeing Board are seeing that through. So we are working with NHS partners and some local charities to significantly improve maternity in the borough, and I think there's really important wider learning for the NHS from that report, so we're very proud of that piece of work and we will see it through. There's always challenges, and recent ones are around vaccination rates. We really want to see much better take-up of vaccines, and of course tackling inequality between the poorest parts of this borough and the richest parts. There's also a correlation with ethnicity, and so we've invested a lot in health outreach services. I think one of the most impactful things we've done is our community health ambassadors. So we have more than 200 people, local residents, who are trained in giving advice and guidance around health and doing really hand-holding and signposting to health services. They're absolutely incredible. They are doing fantastic work, and the profile of those ambassadors really gets to the heart of who we're trying to reach. Our Latin American community, our Black, Asian and global majority communities. So that's a really great strength for us. And we've also done more joint strategic needs assessments than our peers. So over the last 18 months, we've done a JSNA on carers. We've done one on the LGBTQ plus community, and we've done one on our Latin American community as well. And I'm pleased to say they're not stagnant reports sitting on a shelf. All those JSNAs have action plans that again are being seen through the Health and Wellbeing Board to make sure that we and partners make real improvements to the lives of those residents. Across the three divisions, it's high risk stuff that we do. It's safeguarding children, it's protecting vulnerable adults, so inherently it's high risk, but I'm pleased that our principal social worker and our principal occupational therapist are making significant improvements around practice. We're not there yet in terms of occupational therapy because there are some waiting lists, and you might pick that up in your ward surgeries. But last year we sponsored an OT conference here at the council, and we partnered with the Royal College of Occupational Therapy, which happens to be in the borough. So we've signed up to a 5-year partnership with them to promote occupational therapy in local government. And I'm pleased to say that within 8 months of that joint initiative and conference, we are now fully staffed with occupational therapists for the first time ever. And I think sticking with that and valuing OTs will make a real difference and will work its way through those waiting lists. In terms of financial risks, I can't give you an update and Clive be at the table without me mentioning the budgetary pressures. We are under fairly significant budgetary pressures because of the cost of care and that rise in demand, particularly in adults, public health is fine. Children's will end the year fine, particularly with our new children's home, second children's home opening. So in terms of finances, public health and children's are doing okay. Adults is not because of the pressures. But we have built up departmental reserves over the last 10 years. So where we've had funding available to put into reserves. So the pressures that we face this year will not be a pressure on the wider council. They'll be met departmentally. And we have brought in some tighter rules around what we will spend on. So we are covering off all the statutory responsibilities, but some of the extra things that we would have liked to do, we will pause until we're in a stronger financial position. So we will fully recover the budget, but as long as there's a risk there, we have sufficient departmental reserves so that there's not a wider impact on the council. We know there are many priorities for the council, housing being top of that list. And of course, there's wider council commitments to libraries and parks and other things. It's not all about social care, even though we're a big part of the budget. We get that. So we felt it was important to have good departmental reserves so that we didn't impact on the wider council. So I'm pleased to be able to say we can cover that off. We're highly regulated, so as the year goes on, not only will children's services be inspected, but our SEND provision will also be inspected. And then when we open the second children's home, that will be inspected. Our in-house respite unit is also had an inspection, and that was rated good by CQC. So things are holding steady despite the pressures. I think the only other thing for me to mention, and then stop and give you a chance to ask questions, is that I'm also the SRO. I'm leading on the transformation work on third-party spend and procurement. So I'm very pleased to be doing that as part of the wider transformation programme. At this committee and elsewhere, you'll be hearing a lot about the transformation programme and how that will help us adjust to the new funding regime, and why it's important, of course, for residents too, that we continue to modernise and become more accessible. So I'm delighted to be leading that piece of work, which is moving at good pace, and there are definitely efficiencies that we can make, given that we are many departments working with lots of providers. And of course, I'm happy for children's and adults to be at the heart of that as well, in terms of any efficiencies we can make, whilst not breaking our council's commitments around ethical care charters and other important things that we've done. But it's given me kind of a good nosy insight into where all the money's going and what we're doing. And one of the benefits that will come from that, I think, will be some reform of our procurement arrangements in terms of gateways and the processes to make that more straightforward and transparent. So we have 11 business cases that we're going to be proceeding with this year, and then that will inform our proposals to members about future procurement. So I think it's timely, it's important, and I'm very pleased to be doing it, because the more that we can save in that space, the less impact on services that really matter to our residents. So I think that probably signals a change with our chief exec and our CMT, that as well as leading our departments, we're all leading in an area of transformation for the whole council. And I think that gives meaning to when the chief exec says to you and other committees, we're working as one council. We are continuing to reform and transform to be more of one council rather than working in silos. So it's very good to be leading on that programme. I think I'll stop there and give you a chance to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have very few questions. Okay. Do you think that your department would benefit with more centralised procurement processes? And is there any move towards that?
Short answer is yes. The way procurement is done at the moment, it's that each department has its own commissioning teams, and in my case, that's now in the Integrated Health and Commissioning Department under a strategic director. So it's a little bit more arm's length. And then we have a tiny procurement team, like 3 people. We spend, a lot of money with a lot of providers. So I think we could get there quicker if we had bigger and stronger corporate arrangements for all procurement. I think having some departmental specialism to cover off the things is necessary. But the fact that we've got so many people in departments doing, and in housing as well, there's people in departments doing, and then there's a small team kind of holding the reins on the standards. I'd personally like to reverse that. I think having a corporate grip on procurement that really challenges that around value for money. I'll give you a simple example around social value. So some of the papers I've seen recently, some of the procurement reports, they say more on social value than they do on what you're buying and what the market price is and what the outcomes you're trying to get. Now, I'm a big fan of social value because for children and adults, we benefit a lot from that. But it just tells me that, more challenge around value for money and KPIs around performance, stronger levers around tackling underperformance. These are really, really important, and I think a more standardised approach will benefit. So, I predict that there will be a stronger corporate centre around procurement. I welcome the government saying we need to have longer plans published and more clarity around what we're going to do. That's really important for public spend. I will make the case for small provision in each department to make sure we get the procurement right around standards and that we can co-produce some of those services with residents. But I would definitely support a stronger corporate centre on procurement and more transparency so then residents and members can see what's happening and what's in the pipeline.
And you said that there's less children coming into care this year than ever before. Is that part of a long-term trend? Has it been going that way for a period of time now?
Yeah, so nationally the number of children coming into care continues to rise. There's more than 85,000 children in care in England at the moment, and it's really, really sad for them and for their families. Parents don't wake up in the morning and think, how can I mess up my kid's life? If something's going wrong, it's an unmet need. It's an unmet need for those parents, it's an unmet need for those kids. So, nationally the trend continues to rise, but there's a few councils that took part in a very important piece of work called the Care Crisis, which produced a report which was actually launched in this building by the President of the Family Courts just a couple of years ago. And a few of our councils have been working together with judges to make sure that we focus on the causes and conditions of why children are being considered to be brought into care. And that then played through into our family help and our early help services. So the government have recently announced investment in that space and set some standards, but all the things they suggested we were already doing in this borough. We've been doing it for the last few years. So I'll give you a simple example. We have a team called Keeping Families Together. And if when a case comes forward, we think that we can work with that family to address those needs safely, we will never compromise the safety of a child, never. But if we see the potential to work with that family, we allocate them to the Keeping the Families Together team and say work intensively. There's something very unique about Southwark as well. We have an in-house clinical team led by Dr. Jenny Taylor, who's hands down the best psychologist I've ever come across professionally. So she came and established this clinical in-house team. So what it means is that if a child or a family are waiting for specialist mental health input on the NHS, they don't need to wait if they're on our radar. We can work with them directly. And it also means that all our social workers get clinical supervision. So they have a psychologist talking to them about what are you doing with that family? What outcomes are you trying to achieve? What resistance are you facing? Here's a different way of approaching it. So you won't find clinical teams in children's services and other councils, but we intentionally established this team. So it's not just social workers addressing the issues, it's psychologists directly addressing the issues, and that has made a massive difference. So safely, we've brought the number of children in care down, and I think we've also left families feeling respected, so that if they do get into difficulty again, they can come back for help. The police make referrals, schools make referrals, neighbours make referrals, families make referrals. We process every referral through our MASH, which has more than 21, it currently has 21 agencies in the MASH. So, you know, we have a very multidisciplinary approach. But Alistair Smith was a key member of that care crisis review. And working in a council where members have backed us to implement those changes has had a very, very profound impact for those children. And to be blunt as well, has also helped us financially. The other part of the story is that the government set up regional adoption agencies a few years ago. And in South London, no one wanted to do it because you end up taking on adoption for all the other councils. So Southwark was rated outstanding for adoption in its last Ofsted inspection. So we stepped forward and we said, we will host the regional adoption agency. Elsewhere in London, it's by sub-region, so northwest, northeast, but in the south, no one wanted to do it. So we do it for the whole of South London, not just southeast London. We do south, east and southwest London. So all social workers working for adoption were tupied into Southwark Council, and they work for Southwark Council. They work in their local borough, they report to their local members, and local decision making still happens. What that meant was that the variation in adoption was tackled and outcomes were raised. So in London, pre-RAA, the regional adoption agencies, in Southwark, 18% of children were adopted, and in many of our peer boroughs, only 6% or less were adopted. Now, 18% is the norm across South London. That's very important for those kids who are adopted, absolutely life-changing. And also for the councils, if kids are adopted with families, they're not in care and being paid for by the councils. So it's brilliant for the kids, it's brilliant for the new families, but it's also great financially for the councils. So that's holding really well. So every council puts funding into that. They're now getting much better outcomes for the kids, and we're proud to be the regional adoption agency. And because we're doing south, east and southwest London, we are the largest regional adoption agency in the country. So we're playing to our strengths, and we're proud to be transforming children's lives in that space. So that is also helping the other South London councils to see a reduction in children in care because they're being adopted. The last thing I'll say on that is that, back to Dr. Jenny Taylor again, we established a post-adoption support service because adoption can be tough, you know, and it can be tough a year or two later. So we have an offer of post-adoption support to those families as well, that if things get a bit sticky and they're under pressure or stress, then our clinical psychologists work with those children and those families to help hold it together and to navigate their way through it. So we have been successful in getting a lot of funding from the government for that. I'm grateful for that. So yeah, we've played to our strengths and safely managed to get those numbers down. Because where possible, we want children to be with their families. If it's not possible, if it's not safe, of course, we make other arrangements. But, you know, it's usually unmet need for parents and families that cause them to have social services knocking on the door. And focusing on those causes and conditions, I think, is the most impactful thing that we can do in the service of all of our residents.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Some good stuff in there, and when you're gone, we're going to say congratulations on another piece of work, so that's good. Not you're implying you're leaving the council when you're on your way home tonight. Can I ask about any governance implications of the new Ofsted framework to kick off, please?
Yes, thank you. So So there's two new Ofsted frameworks, one for schools and one for social care. I'll mention both because they're important. So just briefly on the social care one, our inspection, which will come within the next couple of weeks, will be under the old inspection framework. So that will be a one-word rating on children's services in Southwark, and will be the full Monty ILACS. It's called local authority inspection. So we'll be the last in the run for that. So you'll have that fairly soon as an inspection outcome. And then a new framework comes in for children's services and for SEND. So that's on the children's services side. On the school side, I welcome that Ofsted have made changes in response to some very difficult experiences under the last framework. The tragedy of the head teacher committing suicide was very distressing for all of us, actually, because we've got a lot of schools in this borough, a lot of schools, because we're a young borough. So we see that journey with head teachers all the time, and governors. It's been really, really difficult. So I welcome the changes that have been made, and our schools welcome the changes that have been made. We still do a lot of support into schools. Despite the education support grant going many moons ago, we still have advisors that go into schools to help them. And we've got some really fantastic local head teachers who also help really generously other schools in the borough. So I would say we've got a strong support network for head teachers. So I want to acknowledge that relief that they've moved to a more balanced and wider framework. There are a couple of things though that I think are important. The new inspection framework goes some way towards looking at well-being in schools, but not as far as I would have liked. I think for children and young people to learn well, and our schools are doing really well, and the kids are doing really well, the outcomes are good, but to really hit your full potential, I think a stronger emphasis on well-being in schools could have been brought in that inspection framework. So we'll continue to lobby for that and to make suggestions. And we said to head teachers, it might not be in there as strongly as we'd like, but show it anyway. Show what you're doing. The one downside I think that remains to play through is how this works for parents. So it was a crude system to have a one-word rating in a school, but at least it gave parents an easy to understand rating on the school. And so, how many parents will take the time to read the more detailed inspection reports and the nuances of different domains with different weighting? I feel for parents if it's going to be tougher for them to work out what school to send their kids to and how their school is performing. So I hope that will refine a little bit over time. People get used to it. But maybe there's stuff that we can do with the schools as well, working with head teachers and governors to highlight the key areas in those inspection reports so people can compare one school with another. Our schools are doing really well. They're doing really, really, really well. I want to keep them doing really well. And I don't want an obscure inspection framework that parents can't navigate to undermine that. So we're definitely not taking our foot off the pedal. The conversations we're having with head teachers are really mature about that, and so I think from our perspective and from head teachers' perspective, the new framework is good, but I think the jury's out on how well it will work for parents, and I think we should pay a lot of attention to that because it's important that parents know how schools are performing. So we'll keep an eye on that.
And then I've got 3 quicker bullet points. All of which you can come back to us on by email, because I don't expect you to have every factor and figure to hand. One of them is just about our performance on EHCPs and the 20-week target, because we were named and shamed by Susan Ackland Hood, and I've been chasing it and others have been chasing it. I know it's been improving, but we need to be on top of that. The other one is just occupational therapy waiting lists and whether that's going up or down and how we're doing on that, because that is a really key thing for many of our residents. but really, really pleased to hear that we're at full capacity in terms of OTs in house. That's really good to hear. And then the third one is just a bit of a bump and a request. When parents hear about school places for primary and for secondary, just bumping to make sure that either you or the cabinet member tell councillors about our performance and give us an update on the number of slots available. Because in the past it's been pretty good. It happened year in, year out. In the last year or two, certainly it didn't happen every time last year. And it's an important thing that we need to know about. I don't mind whether it comes from you, I don't mind whether it comes from the director or the cabinet member, but we need to be told, there's 97% or, whatever the stats are. And if you haven't got a place or you've been assigned a place, etc., then, these are the slots where parents can get advice and help from staff.
Yeah, great. So on EHCPs, our latest performance, which is improved, our latest performance as of December 25 was 48.5% of EHCPs completed within time. Here and elsewhere, no one's hitting the performance that we should be hitting for children and families. We absolutely accept that, it's much improved, but the bureaucracy of EHCPs is just never going to get there. It's never going to hit 70% of EHCPs done within the 28 days. In terms of local pressures, we have dug into it. I discussed it with Councillor Riley this morning because it's on the performance chart, which is why I could bring it up. And all the commentary around that was that there are a number of parts to it. So some of the health assessments, particularly around speech and language, are quite slow, and the EHCP isn't complete until it's fully complete. What we do to mitigate is we do provide funding to nurseries and to schools so that support can be put in, even if the EHCP isn't there. I will also say that our definition on when we start to clock is as soon as we get the request. We know from the audits that have been done that many councils start to clock from when all the paperwork is in. So then they're basically measuring timeliness of all the paperwork is in and complete, you're reviewing it, and then you make a decision. We don't do that. Our understanding, which we checked with the department, is that when the request is made, you start the clock. So we're going to hold to that because we think that's respectful for families. We want them to know how it's progressing. So yeah, 48.5%. It's not where I'd want it to be. I do feel for those families who are waiting. But with our support, and for example, in our special schools, we commission speech and language therapists to work full-time in those schools. So if someone's worried about David can get the help. He might not have an EHCP yet, but he can get the help. And our special schools have full-time speechies on the team who are there. So some of this is kind of a bit technical, as in a bit of the report isn't complete yet, so it can't be signed off. But I would not for 1 second want to dismiss the impact this has on families, because they've got a lot on their plate. I speak to many parents, as I'm sure you do. They've got an awful lot on their plate. So I hope that the reforms in the white paper make a big difference. And personally, I'm a big fan of the Australian and New Zealand models, which are not bureaucratic, and they do involve educational psychologists, but it means the school just provides what David needs and the EP signs it off. And I personally would be very happy to give up all the money on the bureaucracy that we sustain and have that go to kids in schools. There are different ways of doing this across the Commonwealth, that have really transformed it. So I'm hoping it changes, but it's difficult. It's difficult for government, and it's difficult for parents to kind of find their way through this. So we'll see what the white paper says. But yeah, significant improvement on past performance. Where as you say, we were named and shamed. And that's the 48.5% is like the London norm, but it's not good enough for families. So manage that. On OTs, our waiting lists have more than halved over the last year. So full complement of staff. We have the most fantastic principal OT, Sandy Adams, absolutely amazing. Really motivating that workforce. Some people are coming here to work with Sandy. We're so lucky to have her. The partnership with the Royal College of OT is for the next 4 years. So what we're doing is we're sponsoring some prizes around innovation and OT in local government. So it's in the space of housing, in the space of adult social care. It's not all the other stuff that gets promoted. And so we think that will really help us retain. Across children's and adults, full complement of OTs, and they are working their way through. The other thing that will help us is we're launching an AI OT service called Ask Sarah. We didn't name it that. It came with that name. So Ask Sarah. So if someone wants some simple advice about tin openers or kettle tippers or basic stuff, they can get the advice and they can get the kit sent to them. So we're trying to just offline some of the really simple things that people just don't know where to go to get the kit or what would be a solution for that. So some brilliant OTs here in London have developed a piece of software. Anything that's more complex immediately gets put through to a referral. It won't even go there. But on the simple stuff, so we're launching Ask Sarah this year. That will help shift some of the work. But yeah, we've more than halved the waiting list in the last year, and we will continue to target that. We know it's really important, not just for social care, but also for housing. So one of the obstacles, just to be really open and honest with you, is limited funding in Disabled Facilities Grant. That is capped. So sometimes some of the delays you'll be hearing more about in the future might be because that grant has run out, because DFG has not been increased for a number of years. So I'm conscious that as we make much swifter progress, at some point we'll run out of money, and then some people may have to wait. But again, that's something we bring back options on to the councillors to decide, do we want to top that up? Can we afford to top that up? So I think there will always be some delays, but it's going to be because of that rather than the assessments. And we're not going to be complacent. We're really going to look after those OTs very well. They make a massive difference, and delighted they're on board. And on the places available and the information, I'll take that back, and we'll make sure we get information out to councillors, and either through Councillor Raleigh or Alistair. Thank you for raising it. I'll take that back.
Thank you.
Are there any actions that we want to take coming out of this conversation?
Okay, just a minute.
Yeah.
My strategic director about
Yes.
school bus.
Yes. Thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I
But
think
you
I'm here
should-
for the next item.
Item.
Yeah, because it was my decision, so I think I should be accountable
Yes.
for it.
Yes.
Okay, so next item then is retrospective decision, Gateway 1 and 2 Integrated Community Equipment Service. So this is for you to be aware of and to note. I took a decision last year to award community equipment service to a new provider. What happened was NRS, major national provider, went into administration at very short notice, and we were one of 18 London boroughs who had NRS as our provider. This is a really important service because we provide it on behalf of the NHS and the council. So anyone getting community equipment around health and care was getting it through the council. There's an interesting aspect to that. So why do local authorities provide community equipment for the NHS? Because local authorities don't pay VAT and the NHS pays VAT. So the arrangements that we've worked out with the NHS is that what they save on VAT, they invest into the pot for community equipment. So it means we can help more people. Of course, a lot of this kit needs to be serviced, stair lifts, hoists, safety checks are needed, servicing is needed. So when NRS went into administration, we wanted to make sure we could get all the data out of them on all the kit that was in the community for us and the NHS. We wanted to make sure we could continue to access equipment so we didn't have delays in discharges. So we worked with the other South East London boroughs to make sure that we didn't all put our eggs in one basket. So we buddied up 2 councils each, that we would meet with the other providers and that we would choose different providers so we weren't overloading a new provider. So we went with a community interest company in Croydon. It used to be the in-house community equipment service at Croydon Council, and they set up a community interest company a couple of years ago, which is 50% employee owned and 50% owned by the council. So it means they can look after the staff well, but also means the profits go back into the company. So they've taken it a step further. Their performance is very strong and very good. So 2 councils went with them, 2 councils went with another company, 2 councils went with another company. So South East London was able to replace NRS. I needed to make that decision very quickly because I couldn't have a gap, and we had very short notice on NRS folding up. And I'm pleased to say the transition went very smoothly. Community equipment is being delivered on time. It's working for us, working for the NHS, and that provider's turned out to be really responsive. And you know, we like the model. It's a community interest company, employee owned. It's a, you know, they've played to their strengths. In order to make it worth their while and make it, in terms of investment in kit and everything, we did a fairly short contract, but that will run, and then we will go through a full procurement to, you know, dovetail in at the end of that contract. It may well be that the existing provider gets it, or one of the local companies gets it. NRS just got too big. They were the main provider nationally. And there was private equity, and there was, you know, many pressures in the system, so they folded. But we're pleased with the new provider. Transition's gone well. Equipment's been serviced. Equipment's available for the hospital discharges. So it's working well, and it's still within the same price envelope as the budget that was there before. So it's coming here because I made that emergency decision, and we wanted to make sure you were cited on. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you. You have any? No, I have no questions. Thank you. Can we note the retrospective approval decision?
Noted, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a long agenda, so.
No, no. Got through a lot there. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Good evening. So we have our regular progress update for the committee in relation to the delivery of the 25-26 internal audit plan. I'll take the paper as read, but as usual, highlight a couple of points. So you will see there in section 2 are the executive summaries of the recently completed and finalised reports since the last committee, so there's 6 in total. We have a vast amount of work in field work and moving into draft report at the moment in this final quarter. So Angela and the team, as well as management, are very busy at working with us to close down as much work as we can in this quarter. But we are confident that we can continue to get all of our work done and dusted by the end of the financial year to inform our annual reporting in the summer. That also includes, you will see, school audits as well, and a number of those were due to start in January, and I can confirm that field work commenced as planned in January, so we're on course with that school plan as well. And then finally, the report of outlines for the committee, our progress in following up the previously raised internal audit recommendations. I'm pleased to report that obviously the implementation rate has increased to around 95%. We only have 15 outstanding recommendations from prior years, and what's pleasing is that most of those are in the last 6 to 12 months that have been raised, so much more relevant from 24-25, and we've only got 2 that are long outstanding from prior years. But the supplementary paper offers an update to the committee as to why and what actions are being taken by management. So I think there's been real progress there in relation to probably the last 6 to 12 months, and when we've been reporting to the committee that total number of overdue or in progress has definitely reduced. So that was all I was going to say, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
So I guess it's probably actually a question to Clive, but IT backup and restoration.
Yeah.
Like, I continue to be disappointed at IT audits. Taking IT as a sort of broader term rather than, there's this part of the council that does it, there's this part of the council that does that. But like, I just continue to be disappointed. It seems to be a sort of a pattern over the years that the critical IT services are just not quite as good. Well, they're not as good as they should be. So, be interested in Clive's view on that tricky topic.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine for obvious reasons we have a lower risk tolerance in that area than potentially some other areas where the auditor apply judgment. That said, Councillor, some areas do need to improve. Last week we took the decision to terminate the shared service arrangement that we have with our shared party partners, and we're now entering into a process where a lot of those functions will transition directly into the council's direct control going forward.
That's good to hear. And then on a slightly more positive note, there are, health and safety enforcement and Adopt London, both double substantials. It's good to hear. And again, we should, as a recommendation, we should send out congratulations and thanks to the officers involved in that for a great job, because that is a really nice outcome. And it's good to hear up at 95%.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Councillor Simmons, you raised a good point about Adopt London, that we did an audit last year that didn't have a very positive opinion. So there's been a lot of work done by management to improve that control environment. So this was a full follow-up, kind of in-depth review end to end. So therefore, to see a shift from some concerns to that being fixed is obviously a positive trajectory that I should have probably flagged to the committee as well.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I think that's the highest I've seen it with outstanding reports. Not 95% of yeah. So
we did quite a lot of harder chasing this time in light of the concerns raised at the last meeting, the committee, and we got some. Although some of them were a bit late in the day, we got positive responses with evidence to be able to mark them as complete.
You can only keep pushing, can't you?
It's a never-ending cycle, because obviously we're raising all of the 25-26 recommendations, but what I've been saying to a number of committees where we've had a bit of a backlog is that it's much more relevant and up to date, and it also probably shows that the engagement we're getting at the draft report stage, where we agree those timescales, we're getting much more pragmatic and hard evidence to say that actually that is a realistic timetable. So I think I sat on a few meetings ago where I said that's both on our part to challenge management and make sure it is pragmatic, but also management learning that is where they can have a real input into making sure that they don't set themselves up to fail, which I think has been a positive.
Yes. Did you want to add any more?
No, just make that recommendation of.
Yes.
I think we should note the positive 95%, because that's the best we've had for a decade or something.
Yeah.
And also, thanks out to the 2 high-performing services for their hard work.
Yes. Thank you. And as it's coming to the end of this, our last meeting of this municipal year, I want to thank you both very much for all the work, the brilliant work you've done on behalf of this council, and the service you provided to this committee. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you. Can we note the audit progress update? Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah. Okay. Annual report on corporate risk. Thank you.
Evening, yeah, I should take the report as read. Obviously, it's only a short while since the risks were last presented at the November meeting. Just wanted to highlight we did amend the format of the the table, which hopefully that's an easier read for you now, and that and I had to reissue the table under paragraph 17 because there was an error.
Yes, it's been circulated, and I don't know if you saw this. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I was just going to say future. I thought I was going to start crying when I looked at that table, Chair.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Do we have any questions of the officers?
So, interested in looking at the risk score and the controlled risk score, and looking at the different figures.
Yeah.
And crime and antisocial behaviour and a good start in life, schools and education, they stand out as having a big difference between the risk score and the controlled risk score. So I was just interested, why particularly those two? What are the sort of factors or considerations that mean by controlling the risk score you get such a big difference? Oh, and cross-cutting across SODEC 2030 objectives, whereas some of the others, they come down a bit, but not by that extent.
That's very much led by the chief officer for the department. They provide their scores and the assessment, so I'm happy to ask them what it is, but it's
Why
not
not?
me.
It'll be interesting to see what their response is on that.
Okay, thank you. Do members have any more questions for officers? No? Okay. Would any member of the committee like to speak further on this matter? No?
Thanks again, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we note the annual report on corporate risk? Thank you. And thank you very much. And we want to get a response from officers why there's quite a big difference between the risk score and the controlled risk on good start in life, schools and education, and safer Southwark crime and antisocial behaviour. And I think you mentioned one other, but I didn't get to it.
It was SODEC 2030.
SODEC 2030. Okay, thank you. We've got that. Thank you. Now move on to item 11, and that is the operational use of the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides the annual update that we provide to the committee in relation to our uses of account as a council of our Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. I'm pleased to say that in this report for the period for the last year, we have not had need to implement any use of the Regulatory Investigatory Powers Act. So there is a nil response noted in the appendices. But just for information and background, the report also covers issues around when our policy was last reviewed, which was 2024, the fact that we continue to provide training for officers, and there's a proposed further session in 2026, that's to ensure that all of our officers know how to use those powers properly and are properly trained in that aspect. And obviously the appendices, there's also quite a long historical comparison of our use of regulatory powers attached in the appendix.
Is that appendix B?
Appendix A is none and Appendix B.
Yeah.
You'll see the historical comparison.
Right, I see. Yep. Thank you. And what do you attribute to that? We have none this time at all?
It's difficult for us to say because we work on very much instructions coming from the departments in terms of their use of these powers. So it may be that they've decided to switch in the way that they're using their enforcement powers or in the way they have been enforcing. But certainly we have not been asked to sign those off or to take those through that process.
Okay. Thank you. Andy, do you have any questions? No. Okay. No, I have no more questions. Can we note the report?
Noted, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And and you're here for the next one as well. Yeah, next two.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is our annual report that we provide in relation to the review of complaints made under the Localism Act in relation to Code of Conduct complaints against our members. You will see there in the appendices that has been provided that for this period we had a total of 4 complaints down on 2024, which you can see there is the comparison table. Just breaking those down a little bit more, we had one where there was no what we call jurisdiction, so the code was not applicable. We had another one where there was insufficient information provided by the complainant for us to progress the complaint, and there were a further 2 that were resolved by local resolution between the monitoring officer and the appropriate parties. And just to point out in the report that the work around the having a national code of conduct still continues with government, and at some point I'm sure that there will be a final national code that our members will be asked to adopt in due course.
So that work that was being done to harmonise ourselves with the other London boroughs, that's been paused now. We're waiting from what the government's going to report back on.
That's correct, Chair. We set up a working group and we were going to look at amending the Southwark Code to adopt the LGA code, the LGA model code, and partway through that, having gotten quite far along that process, the government introduced proposals for a national code, and that work is still continuing. We don't have a time frame on when that will be finalised, but I know that there's been lots of engagement and consultation with monitoring officers around how that is being developed. And we've put in there the reference should members want to have a look at it, but certain things such as being able to suspend and giving more local flexibility are some of the key elements in that new national code.
And did the government ask for feedback or input into their consultation from local authorities, and did we?
Yes, they did ask for feedback. We have fed back, and we are also part of some of the work being done by MHCLG around the code as well. Yeah, so it's very much, we haven't got a timeline for that yet. But obviously we thought it best to pause our work. There was little point adopting one code and then moving to have to adopt another code nationally. So our code is still good, it's still compliant, but obviously at some point there'll be a national code which would probably be broader and wider than the code we have.
Andy.
Thanks very much for this. So it's interesting to see the number of complaints in 2022, and you know, numbers are always going to go up a bit, down a bit, aren't they? From year to year, there'll be some natural variability. Are the number of complaints in 2022 linked to an election, or is it? Have we improved? You know, why is it lower? What's your prediction for the future?
Very hard to predict the future, particularly if you have a new code, because it might be more onerous. 2022, if I cast my mind back, it was we went through an election period, didn't we? And I haven't got the details of when they spanned, whether it was at the beginning or the end. But it could be linked to a number of factors. And I also think that as you get new members being appointed, and sometimes members of the public having expectations around what a member can do, sometimes that spins out into frustration and people take it through the code of conduct process. But I think what's important there is that in terms of breaches, because people can make a complaint, but whether it's actually found to be a breach, you will see for 2022 that there were a number of local resolutions and 5 of those were no breach of the code identified. So, you know, you often have to go through a process to get to that point. I think the other thing about 2022 that just strikes me in terms of historical knowledge was that we have had times where members of the public will complain about a member, what they think is a code of conduct complaint, but actually it relates to the service department and something that the service department hasn't done, so the council hasn't done, so to speak. And actually, when you look at it, it's not a code of conduct complaint, it's actually a service area complaint that needs to be picked up and responded to by the service. But as I say, in terms of looking at those stats, although 2022 we had a lot of complaints, there were no actual findings of breach of the code after investigation.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can we note the report? Thank you very much indeed. Oh, you're still here for whistleblowing, yeah? Okay. Carry on with this next item, whistleblowing.
Chair, if I can present this item, Sarah Feasy, Head of Law.
Yeah, thank you.
So this report sets out in some detail the nature of, or the statistics relating to the whistleblowing report. So this year we received, or in 2025, we received 14 referrals. And I think the important thing to note is that that doesn't necessarily mean it's a whistleblowing matter. It will then be investigated. So it's a triaging process to consider what the issue raised is all about. And you can see there from the table at paragraph 8 that 5 of them fall under HR. That doesn't actually mean that it was about the HR department. What it means is they related to HR issues, because sometimes people use a whistleblow as a means of raising a grievance or a broader grievance about relations in the area that they work. So that's, I just wanted to clarify that when I looked at that, and I thought, well, it is across different departments in the council. Some in relation to safeguarding, but of the 14 that were received, 4 we went on to classify as actually whistleblowing complaints. So on that basis, the following tables refer only to those 4 particular complaints or whistleblowing issues. 3, if you look in paragraph 10, 3 from employees and 1 was anonymous. And then going over the page to paragraph or table 11, 1 was in relation to resources and 3 were in relation to housing. And then thematically, so what the complaints concerned, 2 were in relation to contractual matters or procurement matters, and 2 in relation, principally in relation to health and safety issues. You'd appreciate sometimes these complaints can touch on a number of different issues, but I think for the sake of not of making the numbers add up, it's better just to kind of focus on the principal issue. And then at table 13, setting out there whether or not the complaints were upheld. So of the 4 that we regarded as being whistleblowing, in respect of 1 of them, the complaint was not upheld. In respect of the other 3, you can see going on from paragraph 14 some further detail about what was investigated, what the outcomes were, and you will see that sort of alongside of that there was an awareness within departments about some of the issues. So in a sense the whistleblowing brought up issues which departments were already aware of, certainly for the number whistleblowing 7 and 1. And the final one regarding the vulnerable adult, the vulnerable individual, there were a number of concerns which were mostly, as I say, health and safety, and those matters were considered and accepted by the department. So I think overall, it's, I think if we compare the numbers, the actual number of referrals received was high, but once you drill down into it and consider it, the numbers, I suppose you might say, remaining steady. But I think that provides assurance as to, you know, the process and that it is working. I don't propose to say any more unless there's anything you want to ask questions about.
I think it's very, very helpful.
Yeah. And of course, some whistleblowing issues that are raised could be much more significant than others. It's always the case, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you get to the triage point, you're really looking to see, you know, to try and get to the bottom of it in as much as you're able to, and often you'll be referring it to departments to ask them to just take that forward. It doesn't actually need a formal whistleblower investigation, but you know, you have to kind of look at it in respect of each case separately.
Very important work. Thank you. Would you like to speak? Would any? No. Okay. Can we note the report? Thank you very much. This you're still here for this, aren't you? Next item. Member induction. And,
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah. Yes. Oh. Yeah. Right. Yeah. To introduce themselves anyway. Very good evening to you. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Start. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stephanie Bryan. I'm Head of Learning and Development at Southwark.
Graham Elder. I'm Interim Learning and Development Partner with responsibility for member development.
Thank you.
And good evening. I'm Ben Plant, Director of People and Organisational Development.
Right, thank you. Would you like to present? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides the committee with an update on the Council's 2026 Member Induction Programme and the ongoing Member Development Programme, following the paper that came to this committee in June last year, in which members asked officers to return to provide an update. So this report outlines the progress made in developing the induction offer across months 1 to 4 of the induction period, the ongoing development programme across the electoral cycle, and the governance arrangements in place as part of the Member Development Steering Group. It also provides an update of the commitment to achieving LGA Member Development Charter accreditation status. So I'm very pleased to say that following the assessment last week, Wednesday, the Council has been formally awarded the Local Government Association Charter accreditation status, which is a great achievement and provides external and independent assurance that the Council will have an effective and well-governed approach to learning and development of its members. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Do you want to start? Yes.
Thanks very much. So a couple of queries to kick off with. So it has become very clear to me that members have a wide range of ability in terms of IT. So some of them are really good, and some of them need additional help. So at the moment, you've got an IT equipment collection and setup, but there's nothing in the first couple of months about using IT. So that seems a bit of a gap. You do have something in month 3 and 4, but there really are some councillors who find it difficult to log in. That they're sort of working from a very, very base level, and so I'll maybe give you 3 points to start with. But I think a request for some type of IT training could be, doesn't have to be bespoke, could be off the shelf, but how do members who are not particularly familiar with IT access training in that first couple of months? The second one was on practical equality, diversity and inclusion, and I just wonder, does it cover anti-Semitism, Islamophobia and anti-black racism, which are sort of three of the issues that members have flagged in particular, as well as, you know, that's not taking away from any of the other, I'm sure, extremely good equality, diversity, inclusion work. And then the third point was there's a series of different parts, including a year 2, and I'm not disagreeing with any of those. But where's the sort of the evaluation point? How are you evaluating each of these training courses, and when will this committee be able to receive an initial update on evaluation, so that the committee can complete its part in that sort of feedback cycle?
So in reference to your first point around IT, so we can build that into the programme so that there's some more training offered for those councillors who may need that extra support. Following the pick up and drop off, there will be drop-in sessions available. It's not listed in the induction programme, but there will be drop-in sessions available for councillors who need that support in the first initial weeks and potentially months as well, but I have noted that. And secondly, with regards to equality and diversity, we're still shaping the content of the sessions, so that is something that we can include as well. So I've noted that with regards to the specific elements that you would like to be included. And then thirdly, sorry, your third point. Evaluation, yes. So the evaluations will be looked at the Member Development Steering Group. So we meet at the moment quarterly, so every 3 months. And then the evaluations will be looked at as part of the Member Development Steering Group. We'll identify what courses have been going well, you know, course attendance, if there's any gaps that are coming up as well. And then as part of that, I'd be happy to come back with a report to update you on the progress of the induction.
Thank you.
I do have another point once you've done your points, Chair.
No, I haven't any if you want to go over.
So this is more, as you hear. So we've got the audit on induction, which is really quite disappointing. So I wondered if you had feedback on that.
What page is that, Andy?
So it is page 39 on our agenda.
Yeah, that's a reference to the BDO internal audit, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes, so as you say, so the audit rating isn't what I'd like to see for that particular audit. The council's existing arrangements have devolved to departments, and the key thing that we need to do is establish more centralised oversight to build more assurance, so that will be a priority.
Thank you. So in due course, we'll expect to see actions coming from this, and the committee will be doing their follow-up in terms of the actions. And have you sorted an action plan? Have you agreed an action plan yet, or is that still to come?
Yeah, so we always do that when the audit is completed, so that's in place.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, that's a bit cheeky, but, you know, you're here.
I'm here and accountable for it, so it's fair enough.
Yeah, it's good. Progress is being made. Thank you. Okay. Can we note the development of the induction programme, the development of the member development programme, and the governance arrangements in place?
Thanks, Chair. I was going to make 3 quick suggestions. One was that we ask officers to put in some access to IT training for those who need it. Second one was just about noting those 3 points about equality, diversity, inclusion. So yes. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-black racism, at least to be part of that. And then the third one, I think, is a recommendation that officers come back with a report after a year on feedback and evaluation, so that this committee is kept up to date, as well as the working group.
Fantastic. Okay. agreed with that? Thank you.
So it'll be February 2027.
Thank you so much. We now move on to item 15, which is variable service charges. Very good evening. Yes. I think we requested this yes.
So just by way of introduction, Dominic Kane, Director Customer and Exchequer, and Louise Turf, Head of Home Ownership Services. You did, Chair, request this paper, which was to provide further information on variable service charges and the approach to charging and how we construct those charges. So you've got two documents. One is the report that gives some further information. The second is a presentation. Don't intend to present the slides. It was by way of further information to supplement the existing report, but open it up to specific questions as you have had a chance to see the detail. I mean, second point, really to say it does include some information in relation to the robust approach that we adopt in constructing the service charges. The second point is to say there's an enormous amount of work, as I know the committee are well aware, that relates to housing improvement. So at the point that we work within the service to construct the service charges, we're obviously working very closely with those in housing as well, of which is subject to a number of improvement activities. So just to point out the fact that Housing Improvement Programme, Good Landlord Plan, of which you're well aware, is obviously central to some of the work that we do with housing around ensuring that we've got a robust approach, ongoing robust approach to how we manage the construction of these service charges for leasehold. Thank you.
So I think I should kick off by saying congratulations on getting the service charge breakdowns online. That's really good. And then the having sort of face-to-face and telephone appointments, that's good. And then doing the surgeries is good. But we have lots of leaseholders and lots of queries, and it takes up a large proportion of my councillor life dealing with them. So acknowledging completely that there's housing, there's you, but the overall service that the leaseholder feels is that combination. Is there an improvement plan that looks at how, that can be shared with the committee, that looks at how that will be improved over the next year or 2 years or whatever? So that's my first question.
There's the Good Landlord Plan, so we are part of that. There is a customer experience plan, and we are part of that. We are also working closely with landlord services on some of the improvements that housing wish to make in terms of leasehold engagement or resident engagement, homeowner engagement, and improving the direct tenancy management for homeowners as well. So there are a number of strands that are looking at improving services overall from the council to the homeowners.
And so we asked for this report in order that committee members can mull over, does Audit have a role to play? If so, what should be the focus of that? Have you got any ideas, suggestions that can, of course, span across different services?
Service charges have always been part of the council's internal audit process, so we do get regularly inspected. We have had scrutinies. That will continue, and we did have an audit last year on one specific area. I would anticipate that within the next year or two we would have further audits. Because all the costs are constructed from the housing revenue account, there is also audits of the housing revenue account every year. The ERP programme to replace SAP part of that, we are trying to pull together a group of officers, relevant officers, to look at the coding issues and to try and improve the structure of the coding on the new ERP system, so we can have a better overview of the individual costs for blocks and estates, which is not just for homeowner issues, although it would lead to us being able to do statements of account next to the service charges, just to show that they are in general coming out with the same figure. But on a wider basis, it will also give the council a better overview of what we're spending on individual blocks and estates and what we're spending on individual services to those blocks and estates. But it's a long-term program.
Chair, I've got more questions, but you may have some questions.
No.
Okay. So here's a couple of queries then. So I've been waiting like 2 months now for an answer about overheads and admin costs. And I think this is a big question that keeps coming up from leaseholders and homeowners. Is there any, so I know I anticipate the answer is going to be no. Is there any overlap between overheads and admin? And I anticipate the answer will be no, but leaseholders, homeowners, ask the question so regularly that implies that the council is not providing the information in an accessible manner that they can say to themselves, I understand what the difference is. I understand how it's calculated. I can be confident of the calculations that go behind it. And I don't need to ask the question. And I'm asked the question all the time, every year. And every year I'm asking, and as I said, it's now 2 months and no one's been able to tell me, to get back to me yet, to tell me in detail the difference in a format that I can then pass on to leaseholders and explain to them.
I'm sorry you haven't had that, because that should have been fairly easy to provide. There is no overlap. We have had an upper tribunal decision which is in line with a number of upper tribunal decisions on overheads across the piece, so not just us but other authorities, other private landlords as well. We just yesterday I got a first tier tribunal decision back which confirmed that overheads and administration are different. The best way to describe it is the overheads are the direct and indirect costs of the council in actually providing the services. So it is the landlord services officers in monitoring, grounds maintenance, caretaking, it's the contact centre, it's the repairs officers, it's the engineering service officers, it's those people who are actually providing the communal services that are charged. And the costs also include the indirect costs, so it's a large authority. We have a number of indirect costs. We have payroll, we have back office finance, we have communications, we have the corporate democratic core, which the HRA pays towards. We have IT, there's office costs. All of these things actually in the private sector tend to be charged above the line. So you get management and administration charged below the line, but all of those costs tend to be charged above the line. Administration is the management and maintenance of the service charge accounts. So it is literally the construction, billing and collection of the service charge. It includes the statutory consultation processes. It includes sort of some areas of work that sort of sit slightly outside the construction, billing and collection of service charges, but it's all of a piece. And then we also provide additional fee paying services, but they aren't included in the administration fee. If you want to know how the overheads are calculated, that is a more in-depth and complex area.
So that will be the second member inquiry when I get a response back to the first member inquiry. But yes, that is what we're asked all the time at surgeries, etc. And so having more accessible explanation on the council's website with a document or something like that, something that can be pointed to,
Yeah, thank you.
would be very helpful in terms of queries.
Yeah, sorry, please ping me your members' inquiry so I can ensure that you get a response as soon as possible. Secondly, in answer to your question, that's a helpful comment. We can look at how transparent those elements are and ensure that it's clearer for all to see. Yeah.
And then in terms of possible audit, it seems to me that energy costs is an area that might, so how the council applies energy costs to communal lighting, lifts, gas, etc., and make sure that those are transparent for leaseholders. That seems like an area that could benefit from some audit work.
That's a fair point. We did a survey, but it was many years ago, to identify all the services which were attached to the meters, basically. But electricity costs across the portfolio are complicated. We have meters serving individual blocks. We have meters serving multiple blocks. So it is, to some extent, it's a matter of judgment. But I do think it's time that we resurveyed them and made sure that we were happy with the percentages charged. To some extent, because if you're a homeowner, you are paying for those services, and therefore the overall electricity cost to the meter, if it's serving the block, will be the electricity cost to the meter. So, you know, there is some element of, well, if it's serving multiple services within a block, it's still one cost, and we could possibly take it out and just charge it as a separate thing. But we do try to align it with the service provision.
But also it's about the sort of the late billing and where the bills apply to, and
we've been doing quite a lot of work to try and improve the information we hold on billing. So we now have an officer in place who will be looking at what we anticipate to be billed, so what the meter readings are against what we are being billed, so that we can pick up those discrepancies at a much earlier stage. In terms of past history, what tends to happen is we don't find out until we are putting together the service charges, and it's only when those are put together that you can see there's a big fluctuation. We need to try and pick that up at an earlier stage, a much earlier stage. So we are doing work to try and get that done.
Just to add, so there is an officer within Louise's team who's been taken on fairly recently to help support that process. Secondly, is a large piece of work that's happening within the council, which is around procurement and the approach to, when I say procurement, it's the contract management piece as well. So throughout the whole life cycle of procurement, there's a lot of work. One of those areas that they're looking at is energy, and that includes all of those elements that relate to the points that you're making. So it will get picked up. I think in terms of internal audit, I think there's probably a discussion to be had at what point they review it, but I know there's a whole raft of work that's currently taking place or is in train to take place over the next few months, which will relate to particularly looking at energy. And how we apportion it. Hopefully the additional resource in Louise's team can help pick that up as well.
Fine. Have I got anything else to say? So Para 8 says variable service charges to homeowners have been subject to scrutiny. I just wondered what type of scrutiny is that? Is that the sort of the external, the audit that was done sort of 10, 12 years ago? Is that overview and scrutiny here? What form of scrutiny is that?
The independent audit was now a long time ago. We have since had we've had an overview and scrutiny investigation. We have had the Housing Scrutiny Commission also looked at it. So various ones over the years, plus the programme of internal audit.
Thank you.
Can we note the report and note the significant work implementing the Good Landlord Plan?
So yes, Chair, but so we haven't got a future work programme for the next financial year. So we haven't got a set of audits for the next financial year on the agenda. But I was going to ask that officers look at, to request that officers look at energy costs and and variable service charges, and whether an audit of that would be helpful now or in the future. I mean, it would be, but it's when it happens. And I'm happy to share the mind-numbing detail behind that, should anyone want to see the mind-numbing detail behind that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We now move on to the annual report on the work and performance of the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee in 2025-26, and I think that's you, Virginia. Yes.
It is me, yes.
Okay.
This is the annual report that is circulated to all members every year, giving information on the work you do. It is here in front of you to make sure that it is a fit representation of the work that you think you've done this year. And if there's anything you'd like to add to it or amend on it, please let me know and we'll do that.
Okay. Do members have any questions for the officer? No. Would any member of the committee like to speak further on this matter? Okay. Can we agree to forward the report to all councillors?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, so we now move on to annual work programme for the following year.
You do. Again, the annual report sets out the work programme proposed for next year from June 2026 through till February 2027. I've listed the items that you've brought up over the past year of having this as a standing item, which has been really helpful for me. And if there's anything else you'd like to recommend adding to it, then or altering on when it's coming, then please do let me know and we can update that. But this is tentatively what we plan on bringing before the committee next year.
Yeah, there is an amendment on that piece of paper, obviously. Yeah, so you can item 18. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So I think it really comes to something back on the agenda. It's really helpful in terms of looking forward. I will still make a recommendation in June 2027. The committee receives feedback, an update feedback report on member development and training that's been done in that first year. So you've got oversight of that.
Do you like that in June rather than February?
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, I think giving them time, if they can do it, but this one is not.
No problem at all.
If you give them a year, then that's plenty of time. You've got no excuse. You can ask them about induction again because the council is over.
Thank you very much. I'll make sure that there's an item in there for February or June, whatever officers feel would be most useful to the committee.
And then, in terms of an audit programme for next year, where are we with that?
So that'll be coming to the June committee. You'll remember we had a conversation last time about some changes we're making to internal audit arrangements. So thought it appropriate, with potentially a new committee and a new head of internal audit, that was the right time to bring it rather than bring it now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can we agree the proposed work programme? Okay. We now move into closed session. appointment of non-voting co-opted members of the Civic Awards Subcommittee.